2011 National Hockey League Entry Draft is complete. All told, 211 players selected, 27 of which played in the United States Hockey League last season. Dan Fremuth alongside Jim Olander, and Jim, we saw 27 USHL players taken, nearly 40 players taken with USHL experience, and there were some surprises, some guys that went a little higher than anticipated in this year's draft.
Yeah, and I think that's a fun thing about the draft. You never, good and bad. Sometimes there's going to be some guys that you think will go sooner, and we'll talk about some of those, but, there's always going to be some guys that you weren't expecting to see maybe quite this early. Kyle Rao is one of them from the Sioux Falls Stampede. He was projected to maybe be a 6th, 7th round draft pick, ends up going in the 3rd round of the Florida Panthers. You could certainly say that his time in Sioux Falls was a big part of that, because he had a great finish to the season and then led the USHL in scoring in the playoffs. And then another guy that was a big part of the playoffs, Jonathan Goudreau, was another somewhat of a surprise, but also, if you look at his stats, maybe not too big of a shocker, but if you go based on the rankings, a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, John Goudreau, a guy who was the USHL Rookie of the Year, and he ends up going 104th overall to the Calgary Flames. And you talked about, Jim, that there were a couple of guys who we've been tracking all season long, expected to be high-end guys. One of those was defenseman Scott Mayfield. He ends up going early in the 2nd round. He went 34th overall to the New York Islanders. This is a guy, a 6'4" defenseman. He's going to be in the league for a long time. That's a pretty good pick by the New York Islanders.
Yeah, I think they were pretty excited to get him, and I know talking to him, he's pretty excited to go there as well. And yeah, he's been a strong force in the USHL. Credits the USHL to his development, and he certainly, it's not going to be too far down the road that we're going to see him wearing that Islander sweater.
Sort of on the other end of that spectrum, the two players that really out of the USHL that were touted as high-end NHL draft picks this year, Scott Mayfield, the other Omaha's Seth Ambrose, and a lot of people projecting Seth to hear his name called early on today. That didn't happen. Ends up going 128th overall in the 5th round to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and had a chance to talk with Seth after he was drafted. Obviously very excited to hear his name called, just a huge weight off his shoulders to finally get that pick, and definitely had the right mentality after slipping a little bit. Seth just went with the idea that the draft, it's simply nothing more than a number. Now he wants to prove those other 29 NHL teams wrong, that them passing on him, he's hoping to prove to them that that's a mistake moving forward. So certainly taking the right mentality there, as Seth Ambrose is selected in the 5th round by the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then a nice story overall, 3 Indiana Ice teammates all selected in this year's draft. We saw Blake Coleman, Sean Corelli, and Brian Furlan, and that was a lot of fun for those guys.
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously Indiana had a great season, had a lot of support up front, and Blake Coleman, of course, most notably a USHL Player of the Year. He had a great season, so not really a surprise there, but anytime you can get 3 players from one team drafted in the same draft year, pretty impressive. And overall, Dan, we look at the stats, and as you mentioned, we've got nearly 40 guys in this draft that spent some time in the USHL, playing in the USHL, and that's a testament to how far this league has grown and getting the respect it deserves around the country and with these NHL clubs. And I think a fun time for not only the players involved, but for players that are coming into this league and maybe even watching this here today. This is what it's all about, and the USHL continuing to develop these guys and get them ready for not only college, but in some cases here the National Hockey League as well.
It was expected to be a very, very deep draft. We saw that, of course, in the United States Hockey League. 27 current USHL players selected. As you said, Jim, nearly 40 players with USHL ties grabbed over the 2-day event here at the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Thanks so much for being a part of it. For Jim Olander, I'm Dan Fremuth. We'll see you later.